the game on the line, you can't fold and you can't bend. Y'all be playing it safe and I be going for the win. Remember back when they was doubting on the kid. Now they tuned in cause my game too legit.
Hey, welcome back, you guys, for Giving AF podcast. This is a second chance podcast. Thank you guys for being here with us today. I know I always say that I have a super special guest, but I think that's because I do get some pretty special guests. And I'm really excited about who I have on the show with me today. His name is Derek Johns. He's the CEO of Dear Son. When I started recording at the studio over here, there was just a good group of men that were all kind of on the same journey that I feel that I am, the same calling, and I feel like it's God putting me in the lives of these men, because already through knowing Derek, I have advanced what I'm trying to do on the level that I wouldn't have been able to do myself. I want to almost call it supernatural, but it's also because I think that he saw some things in me, saw that I was real when it came to this, what I feel like I want to push. And so I guess all I'm rambling about right now is saying thank you, Derek, for very much for like seeing something in me and like including me in some of the stuff you're doing. Could you real quick give my listeners kind of like a quick rundown of like who you are and where you're from and your family situation?
Yep. First of all, man, thank you for having me on the show. I feel honored to be on here, and yes, the energy was right when I met you. So I'm grateful that having the opportunity to be on your show, and glad to plug you with any of my resources as necessary. Derek Johns, man, I'm from Virginia, 757. Most notable cats are probably Allen Iverson, Michael Vick, a few others, but it's a small town with a small area. It's not really a metro area like DFW like we're in now, but that's where I was born and raised. Came here to Texas in 2018 after some moving around with my job. I landed here. This is what we consider home now. My kids have a place to live and call home. The joke was my kids are from nowhere because we moved around every couple of years due to work. Married to one wife, 5 children. Today they are 19, 16, 15, 9, and 7. We got a couple birthdays coming up in December, but father of 5, man, and I'm living a part of my dream right now. As you mentioned, the Dear Son podcast, part of the Dear Son network, because that's the bigger play for me, is to really create a network that helps men see themselves differently and hopefully see their brothers differently. So, kind of own for men, Oprah Winfrey Network for men is what I'm going for. So, happy to be here, man. Let's get into it. What you got?
That's awesome, man. I really love that. Something else, I don't even know if we ever discussed it. Did you know I grew up in Virginia Beach also? I think we kind of did hit on it at one time.
I knew you might have said Virginia Beach, but yeah, so I'm from the other side of the bridge.
So when my dad was in the Navy, right? So yep. he was stationed in, I want to say, was it Norfolk?
Norfolk Amphibious Base?
Maybe it was,
Little Creek?
Little Creek. He was Little Creek. So I was there until I was young. I moved to Philly when I was like 9 or 10.
Gotcha.
And then, so I would say grew up. I claim Philly, but definitely had some roots in Virginia. So that's really cool. And Allen Iverson has been like a huge, probably one of my favorite athletes of all times for sure. So that's pretty cool. So the Dear Son Network, right? Mm-hmm. First of all, it's so awesome and commendable. I don't mean to, when I say stuff like this, I don't mean to like say shame on anybody who hasn't been, because I'm on my second marriage, but it's really awesome to see someone, 5 kids, 1 wife, successful marriage and relationship. So I really commend you with that. I think that's cool because you're actually walking what you teach. You know what I mean? So that's really awesome.
Yeah. And nothing successful I'll take, perfect I won't take. We figured out that we needed to work on our marriage before it was too late, and I'm grateful for that. All credit to my wife. My wife is the life hack. She's put up with me, and again, I figured it out before I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. So because we're grateful to be in this place, we're kind of sharing our experiences with others through the podcast that I do with my wife. It's called Healthy Marriage is Dope. It's the same approach as Dear Son, right? These things that I needed to repair in relationships within my family. And we're talking about it on air.
That's so good, because I feel like, and I love the Healthy Marriage is Dope. I actually want to get one of those shirts, because I really think that, I don't know if it's like just the music industry or just, it's like marriage isn't really glamorized like it used to be. It's not like a cool, popular thing anymore.
Yeah.
And also what you said with the podcast, the marriage thing, is like, if you're not investing in your marriage, then if you're not investing and pouring into your marriage, then it's normally going the other direction, right?
Yeah.
So like we went to a marriage conference. Christy and I went to a marriage conference this weekend Shout out to Gateway Church. Montel Jordan was actually the head speaker there, and him and his wife were on the same sort of a mission, like saying, hey, look, I know that this is how we do it was kind of a cool thing, but like what we're really trying to do is push marriage and what's really going on and like what's real when it comes to having a successful life. Can you tell me kind of your why and your purpose for starting the Dear Son Network?
Yeah, Dear Son was really personal because, let me lay the groundwork. I had a great father. Great father was in the house. I came from a 2-parent household. It was me and my sister. My sister's 5 years older than me. From the outside looking in, I guess cookie cutter kind of, faith-based family, the ideal scenario. And a lot of it was, but my father came from a relationship with his dad that wasn't developed, right? His dad was around when he was a provider. He didn't talk to him, didn't really communicate. It was kind of a communicate when necessary, like pick that up or what happened there. It wasn't really a loving relationships in the terms of being expressive. And my father lost his father when he was between 20 and 22 years old. He went to Vietnam, had to come home, bury his father. He went right back. And he never had a father as an adult. So he was kind of navigating that space on the fly. I'm sure he had older guys that he looked up to, but not having that model before you, you're essentially trying to figure it out. So I was somewhat of I was a very strong-minded child, right? I always asked why. That's why the military wasn't for me. I asked why too much. And I didn't really care for his rules. We were, like I said, we were faith-based. The religion, we were Seventh-day Adventists growing up, so the religion was very strict, right? And I didn't understand it, and I thought that I should have a choice in that matter, but that was my dad's house. So that was kind of the crux of me not getting along, because it wasn't for him to get along. I was in his house. And I started to put space between me and him. Like when I got my license at 16, he's coming home, I'm leaving. I was timing things so that I wouldn't have to spend so much time with him. And again, it wasn't because of any abuse or anything like that. I didn't care for his rules, and I didn't want the information from him. He come from, like I said, the generation that be seen, not heard, so he wasn't going to force the information on me. So this gap just continued to grow. I go off to college, fail miserably my first semester. I go out and get a job, all of these things that he's advised me not to do, but I just knew too much. And I get out there in the world and I realize that I need my dad. But now I'm embarrassed because I've said or demonstrated that I didn't really need him, so the problem's compounded. Anyway, my oldest son, I have two. My oldest son was at the age that I remember not wanting to be around my dad, and that fear paralyzed me. And I started to project some of the things that I was feeling as a child towards my dad on him. Now, he's not that kid. He actually wanted to be around, but I knew that I didn't want to be around my dad, so I figured he didn't want to interact with me. So now we have this gap, and I'm like, oh man, this is happening again for different reasons, but the same result. So the podcast was really, God placed it on my heart in 2020. Seriously, that's not a trite thing to throw out. September 2020, around my birthday. My birthday is September 8th. I put the trailer up and did nothing for a year. September of 2021, I actually put up my first episode. That first episode may have only lasted 30 minutes. It probably took me 6 hours to do, because I was just in my head, what are people going to think? And I got past it and I realized that, no, this is holding me accountable to make sure I give my son the tools that I didn't necessarily have because I didn't want them, right? Again, it's no fault against my father. And we've had a conversation because of this podcast where we talked as men and kind of aired our concerns about that time. And now he's like, it's weird to say he's my best friend, but I appreciate him like never before. Right. I really understand what he went through, especially as a father. So that was the how, right? And that's why I keep doing it. My passion is to make sure that these conversations are available to him, right? And I have conversations with him on camera and off camera too. And other men that might be in different phases of life trying to navigate it. I want there to be a library of information that they can say, hey, that's something I'm struggling with. What do these guys have to say about it?
That's so good, man. It's really good. And I think that, well, two things. One is me watching your production and the way you do things. Like, I can't picture you not being awesome at it. You know what I mean? Like, I can't picture you starting out and taking 6 hours because you're just so smooth with the stuff that you do and the way you put things together. So like that actually gave me a little bit of hope because I struggle through some of this. You know what I mean? I get the anxiety of, oh my God, I said that wrong, or people going to judge me for it. So it makes me feel better that you weren't perfect right away too. Sorry, I know that's kind of irrelevant, but
No, I think you're natural, and that's the funny thing. Every time you say it, I'm like, no, this guy. I mean, it seems natural to you. You got the look, and you got the energy.
thank you, because
cool,
that means a lot, because I had anxiety coming up here today, like, oh man, I'm about to interview Derek. He's so good. He's been doing this for so long. I hope I do this right. Like, it's crazy the way I can. Secondly is, it's crazy how we can look at our fathers or other fathers and come up and like almost like judge them in ways and not actually realize that their past plays into the fact of why they're like that. Yeah. And I think that's really big, because sometimes we don't understand that something that the way that our parents were parented plays a role in how. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's the thing, that we're ultimately, every child is watching their parent grow up too, and you're judging from a child's perspective. Adult matters, and if the adult doesn't understand, how does the child understand it? So you get this perspective of what they're doing and what you would do differently at such a young age. And then you have kids, and it's like, yeah, I'm responsible for other humans. That's a pressure.
It's so crazy. Imagine. I want to tell a quick story. So my dad, raising us, was military. He never, like, I would say hit us other than like spanking here and there, but he was very intense, right? So like he would, like, veins come out of his neck when he'd be mad and angry, and he would like grab me and kind of shake me, but never like hit me, just scare me, right? And I was terrified of my dad. Well, that's how we grew up. And then 2 years ago, I went home. And my dad had twins at 50, okay? So he had a twin daughter and twin son at 50 years old. So we're sitting in the living room, and my brother Caleb says something to my stepmom that was not crazy, but definitely disrespectful. And immediately I clenched up like, oh my God. Like, I was scared for Caleb. And my dad said, Caleb, go in the other room and sit down and think about what you did. And I was like, what? I looked at my dad and said, Dad, what? Like, what do you mean? He's like, Shawn, it didn't, the way I parented you, not saying it didn't work, but it caused me stress. It caused you fear. So it's crazy how like we can learn from our own parenting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And to think about it, your dad had what space of time to realize and evaluate the way he parented after you became an adult.
Yeah.
Right?
Not everyone gets two chances at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Second chance, right?
Yeah.
Similar conversation with my dad. And he said the same thing. Like, man, like if you have an opportunity to if you know you erred in some way, right, and you have an opportunity to correct it, like, this is my generation to correct it. So, it's weird, but,
I think that's good. I think it takes pride to be able to say, man, I didn't do it great the first time. And a lot of us can't. A lot of people struggle with being able to say, man, I was wrong the first time, or I'm wrong right now. Right. I might have yesterday. There's things I did yesterday with my son that I should have been better at.
I agree.
And I think that a lot of fathers aren't willing to admit that or realize that they could do better, and that keeps them from ever reaching that potential of great fatherhood.
That's really good, because you never arrive. It's like, I guess it's like your fitness journey, any other journey in life, and we probably take it for granted. Like, we think we do a couple of things, we put a couple of good months together, a couple of good seasons together being a father, and we think we got it. Yeah. But the kids are evolving. And if you're not evolving, there's going to be a clash at some point. So, you got to work at it.
That's so good. And I even sent you guys this song that I listened to, and it talks about, if you look at my social media, and I'm guilty of this, if you look at my Facebook and my Instagram, I'm like Father of the Year, right? But you don't see pictures on my social media of me scrolling and my son saying, Dad, Dad, Dad. Like, I don't post that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
not a cool thing.
That's not cool, right? So, I mean, I'm totally guilty of my social media looking like I'm this amazing father when I definitely still struggle, and that's why I love what you do so much, because I want to be, I don't want to look back and be like, dang, I wish I would have been more present for my son, or I wish I would have been, because you only get really one shot per kid, right?
That's it.
So I don't want to. So just to switch speeds real quick, you're right now making a transition from a very successful career in the corporate world to full time in this Dear Son network, right?
Yeah.
So it's awesome. It's got to be scary. I'm gonna. Can you kind of explain your feelings towards it, and how have you had support, and just kind of run with that for a second?
Yeah. So the easiest part of it has been that my wife specifically, well, first and foremost, is very supportive. I think I've told the story before where I came home early in our marriage and told her I was an entrepreneur. At the time, she was pregnant with child number 3. She had just put in her papers to get out of the Air Force. So it was only going to be my income that was stable. And then I said, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. We're both going to be home. We're going to figure this out. So she doesn't really have a good baseline to trust me based on that one specific event, but I think I've earned some of that trust back over time. I am still understanding how I feel. Like this is, at the time of this recording, I'm 3 weeks. This is week 3 of freedom or burden, however you want to frame it, right? Week 3 of it all being on me. And I've had the benefit of knowing it was coming, right? So the formal notification, I've been in government supply chain for a long time. I was able to work my way up through management into the executive level, only saying that to give context because I got a 90-day notice, right? And then there's a way that you get exited, which is facilitated relieve some of the financial burden. But I saw what was happening with the company a year ago, right? We were going through some transition. We lost some leadership. I was put into a leadership position as the VP of supply chain, which gave me, I call it my PhD, right? It gave me insight and access to information and decisions, and I felt the weight of that. As I look back on it, not just specifically with that position, but the culmination being that position, I have all of what I need to build an organization. Like I understand it, right? I understand what it takes. I understand processes. I understand policies and procedures. So I have no excuses not to build a good company. That's what the heaviest weight is because I don't have any excuses.
Yeah.
I can't point to something and say, well, I never had this. Like this, it's really easy to be part of something bigger than you because there's way more pieces moving that may distract somebody from seeing your flaws. When it's team of me, not like diminishing my wife's role, but like this is what I'm choosing. Yeah. Like we've had the arrangement where she's been at home as you know, she's been the caregiver and the CEO of the house, right? Since 2015, and even before then, she came home for a period, went back, but we moved overseas in 2015, and that was kind of the end of it because it didn't make sense, right? Mm-hmm. We had 5 kids, moved overseas, and she facilitated their distance learning. They homeschooled. So when we came back, you know, now it's her turn to figure life out too, because her life has been on pause. That was a bigger challenge for me, is recognizing that that it's more to it than motherhood, right? Because that had become her identity and I didn't understand it. So that was a part in our marriage, like what that whole healthy thing is, like that was a test to make us stronger, because I had to step back and realize that, number one, stay-at-home mom is not easy. I don't want it. Yeah. Like I'm very clear that that's not the job. I wouldn't switch. But then how do you lose yourself, right? Yeah. You can lose yourself in that when it's all mommy talk, and that's all people see you outside of the home, right? So it like that, managing that piece of it, along with trying to demonstrate that we're going to be okay. Those have been kind of the biggest challenges because they're happening in parallel, and I want her to thrive. And it's just an interesting time for us to both be trying to accelerate as entrepreneurs. So it's good because she understands it through that lens, like the pains of business. And it's also a challenge because corporate was kind of easy for me. Not that I was great, but like anything, like whatever you lift now, 50 pounds earlier is easy for you, right? Yeah. Not that it wasn't a significant amount of weight, but you just had the muscle to do it. It's kind of how it was for me. So
that's good.
You know,
no, that's good. I really like the way you include your wife's feelings and her, like, the part that would be hard is, and I never really heard anyone say this before, except the way you just said it, is like losing your identity as a mom. Like when you become mommy, what is your wife's name? Keisha. You forget about Keisha, right? Like it just, you almost, like as a woman, it would be hard to just become that mommy role and then forget about who you are by yourself. Like that. So that's really cool. Yeah.
Outside, before that, during, after, you know.
I've never heard that expressed that way, and it's really good. And it's just more shows like the reason that you're so good at what you do. I want to kind of go into some like stuff that can like help some people that are listening to this, especially like father-wise. So dealing with different men and coming across different things that you learn and teach with what you go across. Mm-hmm. What would you say are some major issues that men are struggling with in fatherhood currently?
Communication, right? choosing your words and using your words, right? Many of us were ruled or raised by fear. And because we believe that worked on us, we believe that's the way, right? And we often don't take into account the application, right? The thing that worked on you as a child may not work on your child. So being aware and humble enough to understand what your child really needs, right? What they're going through, different types of discipline work. And you're not asking for the debate, but I am a believer in discipline. I am a believer in appropriate discipline, right? And what works for me in my house, I don't preach as what you should do in your house, but I realize that after having that conversation, especially after having that conversation with my dad, he probably would have chosen some different tactics at different times.
That's good. I know when I first came home, not to interrupt you, sorry. When I first came home from prison, and now my son was 6, and I got full custody of my son immediately. And and he's going to school and starting it. I just immediately went straight to the way I was parented, to the anger spanking, type parenting, to the point where I would be I would never hurt him. I would spank him in the butt, probably too hard, but I would literally be angry in it, almost why are you? And it's something that I don't do anymore. And it's not like I'm saying I think there's anything, if you are the type that feels that spanking a child is appropriate, that's okay. I did for a long time. I wouldn't even say that I'm completely against it right now, but I feel like it was more, there was something inside of me with it more than it was parenting or trying to correct him. It was almost like I was taking out an anger about other stuff on my son. And I felt sick to my stomach afterwards every time. And I just realized this is not the way. I don't want my son to be scared of me. I want to be able to have a respectful, loving relationship.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's a manifestation of the things that you're upset with yourself about.
Yeah.
Right? Like if the child runs into the street and you grab him, you yell at him, say, "That car was going to hit you," and you spank them because you want to burn that into their mind that running to the street is dangerous. Well, maybe you're mad because you weren't watching them and they ran into the street, right?
Yeah.
And that reaction happening in that moment, the child can't process that. They kind of understand that the street was this, but what was your responsibility in this situation? Is that what you're really carrying out on your child,
That's
right?
good.
Because how often do we pause, go for a space of time, and then come back and still spank them or whip them?
Yeah, no.
If you can, maybe that's a far better approach. I guess it depends on the age, because sometimes justice is swift, and I get that. But if the guilt rides you after it, there's probably something in you that drove that action.
I agree 100%. And that's kind of what, so with the communication stuff, because when you said this, it made me start to think about sitting down and asking our kids questions before we get straight into the discipline or jump into things, asking them and I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know if this is correct or not, but say, hey, why did you do this? Or what were you thinking when you did this? Is that stuff that you recommend?
How else do you, to understand what they're thinking helps you determine what the appropriate course of action is. Because if they never connect the action with the punishment, they only see it as your punisher, you still haven't solved anything. So you need to understand, and I'm not saying if this is the 11th time that you told them not to do something, and I don't know what that count should be before you take another action. But if your reaction to their misbehavior doesn't actually incorporate any understanding as to why they may have done that, you and the child a disservice.
You've done nothing but just hit your kid
That's
or whatever. Yeah, that's or scare your kid. It might not be hitting. It might, because there's times where I would just get too angry. It wasn't even necessarily that I would hit him. I would just get so mad that I just felt, I don't like that feeling of feeling sick or feeling guilty. And I don't want my son to grow up feeling angry with me, or not angry with me, but think that I'm angry at him all the time, Yeah.
Here's the reality. Once your kids are in school, first grade and better, or maybe even kindergarten, we have the minority stake in their attention. Their attentive hours are spent at school with somebody else that doesn't necessarily have the same care for them as we do.
That's good.
They come home after we've given our attention away to somebody else that we may not, love, or the scenario everybody feels a way about work. And now we're carrying that into the house, and that kind of informs how our tones and how we react to them, because we're frustrated from something that they had no control over. and we want more control over our life, but we're not in a position to have it. So we got to keep going to work. Got to keep going to work because I got this family. If I didn't have this family, I wouldn't have to go to work. Like, you can easily slip into those dynamics of where you're linking your frustration to the fact that you brought this child into the world that didn't ask to be here, and start to kind of take out some of that stuff on them because you're not where you want to be in life. That was me. And it wasn't lashing out, but it was lack of attention, right? So I'd buy stuff. I got to work these 12 hours so that I can get promoted, and now we can buy more stuff.
That's a big one. I think I see that a lot.
Yeah. And so, like, the genius of my show, if there's a genius, is I'm just telling you what happened to me. It's not about me being a guru. I'm saying, hey, I did this and it sucked.
Yeah.
It didn't go right. And as I find things that work, I'm letting people know. But I think what my platform does is it gives people courage to look at themselves and maybe start having those conversations. And if that's what happens, if that's it, that's the win for me.
That's so good. And that comes with you having to take a hard role of being so vulnerable and transparent, but like, that's a hard thing to do, especially nowadays. I feel like that's something that I said this in a couple of my episodes before. I think vulnerability and transparency, or like being real with who you are, is one of the like most attractive like characteristics of a person. If you're able to, I said self-awareness before, right? Because it's just like, it's so easy for us. And when you said about the starting to just buy your kids stuff, like as in like, here, this is the way I'm going to show my love and attention to your kids. You're taking, now that's a way that your kids are going to think that that's how you should show love to someone. And it's just a big cycle, right? Like, one of the things that I definitely want to work on with my wife is how I speak and treat my wife in front of my son. I think there's a lot of times where I will, even if I don't agree with what she's saying, mm-hmm. right in front of my son is not the time and the place to let her know that I disagree with what she's saying. Because I don't want my son to then think to have an argumentative soul with the woman that he chooses to be with. So that's something that, like, I'm trying to work on with that, because honoring your wife is something that's very important, especially in front of your kids. And I think that nowadays we're just really quick to fight and argue in front of our kids, and that's something that's
good, man.
One more thing. How about another major issue? I know that's the communication one. Give me one more. I know you got a bunch in there.
Forgiving their past.
That's hard. That's a good one too.
Yeah, it's whether it's how you were treated, whether it was missteps you made in life, whether, like, for me, it was a lot of man, I think we should be further along financially, because I just did some dumb stuff, right? And that may be shallow, but I'm thinking of it in terms of what it could do for my family, not necessarily having a certain amount of money in the bank. And then that would prevent me from seeing current opportunities that would accelerate or propel us, because I'm holding on to that thing. And it pulls on the thread of communication. But, like, with communication, I think a challenge for men is we decide the outcome based on conversation we have in our head that never see the light of an actual conversation. Like, for me, and I've said it before, I would already have the conversation with my wife in my head, and in my mind, she's not agreeing with something that I want to do. Now I'm upset with her about not agreeing with me on a conversation we never had.
That's good. That's good. I do that. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Only to find out that if I actually talked to her, she wanted to be informed.
Yeah.
That was it. Just and it wasn't necessarily asking permission so much as it is seeking the blessing, right? Because if you're aligned, when you see something that's important to your wife, even if you don't understand it, there's probably a conversation that y'all can have that will get to a place where, within reason, you're going to accept it because you understand that this is a thing that she needs. It may not be your choice or your course of action that you would recommend, but you know that she needs this thing. She needs to pursue this thing. She needs to have this opportunity because it's going to do something for her that you could never understand.
That's good.
I was terrible at that. That's really good. Because I'm logical to a fault. And my actions, that's another one. Mind your face, fellas. And you probably can point out some screenshots while I'm doing it in this interview, or this conversation. But, like, the way that we react can really impact their confidence.
That's so good, man. There's so many times where there's something that I want to do, and I'll I know I should bring it up to my wife, and I know I should say it first before I do it, but I'm worried that there's a chance that she's going to tell me she doesn't think it's a good idea. So then I make the move, and that's what caused the problem, not the fact that she would have been like, Shawn, whatever you do, if you feel like it's the right thing, and if you've prayed about it, I support it. And I know it's like, but sometimes I'll just go ahead and make a move, and now I'm causing the conflict just because I didn't just become a team. Let her know, like, just voice it, and then, like you said, ask for the blessing, because they want us to do what's good. They want to support us.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
What I think a better way to say what I was saying is, men afraid of rejection.
Ooh.
At an alarming rate.
That's good, yeah.
And we mask it with other things that look like success or look like making the right move, because we don't want to hear. We don't. No, seemingly invalidates us in some way.
That's good. I'm going to go a little bit left here on one that I think that's important with this whole sort of topic and everything. And I feel like, what do you think about with today's culture, right? And I mean overall, like today's culture, and the way there's a lot of, don't want to make this political, but there's a lot of movements and stuff that are actually kind of like against father figures in general, right? Almost like toxic masculinity and stuff like that, where it's almost like they want you to feel sorry for being a man and being a husband. And do you have any like say on anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, anything with toxic attached to it is negative. Don't be toxic.
Yeah.
Right now, the definition is loose, and people will call it different things. But I think there's a toxicity level in any relationship that can manifest.
Yeah.
Don't be toxic. You know what I mean? Do your best to be aware, to be self-aware, make the changes that you need to make in you, and demonstrate that to your family, to the world. Like, I don't really, like the definition of manhood, a father, of what a mother is, and a wife, they're all extremely important within our house. That's where we first demonstrate that, right? What people say outside of our house, that's an opinion.
That's good.
That doesn't impact.
It's kind of irrelevant,
yeah,
right?
It doesn't impact how we manage our house. I think too many times we're managing our house to outside opinions, and that can go for anything. So when you come in my house and you see the plates are on the left instead of the right, you may have a problem with that.
It doesn't mean you're wrong for having it on the left. Yeah,
that's fine. And you also don't have to eat in my house.
That's good. Yeah.
or you don't have to come back. So I until for the last few years, I've been like aloof, like clueless to a lot of current events, right? Like I try to stay more aware of it now, or they're more in my face now because I have 3 teenage children, right? So topics are popping up, they're on TikTok, they're on this.
Yeah.
And like, I wouldn't get the reference, but I like that because that doesn't justify, it doesn't validate how I parent or how I carry myself as a man. I understand what my responsibilities as a man are.
That's good. It's black and white.
Yeah,
it's not, the media doesn't change how you need to father in your home.
The only thing I can do is be consistent and consistently get better to serve my family as that man.
That's the perfect response. That's really the only right one. I mean, it's just, you have your morals, what you stand on, and you're not swayed by outside circumstances or events or things going on. And I think that's awesome. So last sort of question I just kind of want to like wrap up with is, I have a couple actually, but what is a piece of advice that you have for maybe new fathers, expecting fathers, or even fathers who are kind of like realizing that they want to do better or need to do better? Just maybe like a couple pieces of advice that you have for some fathers that are just trying to get back.
Yeah, man, it's you're not going to always get it right, and that's okay.
That's good.
But continuing getting it wrong is not.
Ooh.
Right. So the post the other day, like, once you corrected the behavior, this is something that I posted, forgive the behavior. Don't go back to it, but don't dwell in the fact that you didn't get it right.
Don't beat yourself up over it.
2 days ago, because the reality is the situation is always changing, right? I call my children algorithms, right? And as they grow, they have more experiences to draw from that changes how they are in a given moment. So at any time, one that was happy, something happened and now they're sad, and I can't manage them to their happy place. I got to manage them where they are. So you just be aware, be present in the moment. Don't beat yourself up. Take the lesson, and let your children see, let your family see your growth. Don't try to hide all your imperfections and then jump out and say, boom, I got it. No, they need to understand that there's a process that, that there's ownership, there's accountability, there's adjustments, right? And it's important, and they need to know that it's important to you that they understand that.
That's good.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, new dads, man. Here's a don't be dumb like me. When there's a newborn, newborns wake up throughout the night, right? An appropriate response when your child is crying in the middle of the night is looking at your wife, your significant other, your child's mother, and saying, one of us has to go to work in the morning, and allowing her to always be the one to get up. Help.
You're saying don't do that, right?
Don't do that.
Yeah.
That's a don't be dumb like Derek moment.
That's
Like
definitely good advice.
I really thought that, like, logically, you don't have to work. The reality is that's way more work than a man can imagine.
Oh, right. You get to go to work while she, yeah.
That's a better perspective. Yeah. It's, seek the help, man. Don't, and even if I'm saying that kind of in jest, but ask, because sometimes it could be, you think they got it, right?
Yeah.
Me and my wife had a conversation about postpartum impact 2 years ago. Our youngest child is 7. So we never had the conversation about what that was. I just thought she was incredibly strong and she got it. If I give her space, she'll be fine. She didn't need space. She needed me to be there for her at different times. So read the room. Maybe that's another way to say it.
Yeah, that's good.
So even when you think, like, it's, again, one of those conversations in your head, let those conversations live, and some of them.
That
right?
goes back to communication, right? It all goes back to communication.
All of it.
That's really
All
good.
of it. Yeah.
I have 2 things that I want to put in there for advice that I think that has been really good. One would be, and I stole this from Rod, from Father Figure, be present, not perfect.
That's Reg.
Reg, that's what I meant. Reg, yeah, sorry. That's
Rod's
what
coming up too. What up, Rod?
That's what I meant, Reg, from Father Figures, yeah. Be present, not perfect. Like, to me, that's like the biggest, like, be present, man. Like, you don't understand how it's not just about going around getting women pregnant and just bouncing on your responsibilities. Like, and it's, even if you're not with your child's mother, right? Be present, man. Yeah. Be there. Be around as much as you can. I know that sometimes it's hard in relationships with the ex or the baby's mama, but that's a blessing that you were given that child, right? Like, don't just take that for granted. And I know that that's kind of like, and then the other one that I'm learning right now, and I struggle with it, man, is I need to let my son be who my son is, not try to manipulate my son into being who I am or want him to be. And it's hard for me, right? Like my son, there's things that he's into that I'm just like, what? Like, but I'm now having to learn, like, you know what? He's got so many gifts that I don't have. You know what I mean? And I need to learn how to just, like, I don't know, is it foster the gifts that I don't know the exact word, but like, let him grow up in the gifts that God gave him, because they're not the gifts God gave me. And it doesn't mean they're wrong, or that doesn't mean they're not cool. And in the past, I've made comments. For instance, he wanted to do band. And thinking that I'm like, band, you know what I mean? But now he loves it and he's freaking awesome and it's cool. You know, like, I just need to learn how to let him be him and not something that I expect of him.
That's good. That's great.
And then the last thing I have to say on this before, because I want you to let people know how they can find your stuff. But the last thing is, and again, this is not something that I'm trying to make anyone feel bad about or anything, but the percentages of kids that, like, when it comes to suicide, or when it comes to domestic abuse, or when it comes to prison, or when it comes to, the numbers are staggering about fatherless kids, of how those numbers are. Like, when that father's not around, those numbers, like, it's crazy how high they jump. So if there's, like, one thing that we could do to help make this world better when it comes to a lot of the stuff that we deal with, it's back to that present thing, just being there, being available, you know?
Yep.
Can you let my listeners know before we wrap this up, like, how they can find your stuff? Because you have great content, like, whether it's your handles or whatever.
I appreciate that. So on IG and Facebook, it's the Dear Son Podcast. On Twitter, I have it's at Dear Son Podcast. I have a more hate than love relationship with Twitter. But IG, I am there every day. On YouTube, it's the Dear Son Podcast. And now with the new YouTube handles, it's at Dear Son Network. So that's a new thing that YouTube rolled out. If you're on Roku, I have a channel like you would see Netflix or any other app on there. It's the Dear Son Network, so you can download that. It's available to the public, and content is there. So on the digital streaming platforms for podcasts, it's Dear Son, comma. So it'll come up if you type in Dear Son, comma, as the podcast itself. So Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Audible, all the places.
That's cool. Also, can you, the guy that you work with that we met here last week, what's his name?
Forrest. Yeah, Forrest. Forrest is actually the first show that I'm producing for the network that I'm not in.
That's cool. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's called The Couch. So he has a he has a very informative TikTok and IG channel, right? And he's a young guy. I think he's 30, 31, and his perspective on life is very mature and is resonating with people. So he started doing like the reels where you upload just pieces of conversations, and then he started going live, and folks are really resonating with the way that he converses, his poise, and his position on different parts of life. So we're filming an expanded format of that, right? It'll be in the same vein, having meaningful conversations about real topics and going a little bit deeper into those. So it'll be some where he's solo, some will have guests. But I'm looking forward to it. So
That's cool. I love that you're pretty much producing it. It's kind of how you look at it.
yeah. So the goal was never for me to be in front of the camera. Being in front of the camera was a byproduct of going through this process of Dear Son. I would much rather make people look great and tell their stories. So that's where I want to live in this phase of life, is just telling stories in a responsible manner that are meaningful.
Oh, that's why you're so humble. That's why I have to pull this stuff out of you sometimes, because you're not gonna, you know what I mean? Nah. And that's cool. That's why your personality is attractive, man. I think that's really it. I think we had a bunch of good information. Again, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for being here. I want to make sure that we shout out that the Phillies are up 2-1 right now in the World Series. So hopefully we can get that win. Do you have anything you want to say before?
Go Cowboys.
Oh, man. No, we're going to cut that one out. Cut that out. No, but remember, you guys, you know how I always end this, and I want you to know that this is real, that you're loved, that you're forgiven, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. I love you guys. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.